Hey guys, welcome back to another video. And in this video, we're going to talk about the biology of a high protein diet. Now, I have talked about the benefits of a high protein diet and why high protein diet is useful for maintaining a certain level of health, losing weight, and also obviously gaining muscle. But we haven't really talked about the biology and the hormones and what goes in our body while we are doing a high protein diet. In the hopes to provide this biology, we can better understand our body and we can take actions to lose weight, gain muscle, or maintain a proper standard of health. So that's my goal, putting forward this information so that we can work with our biology so that we can complete our goals. But when we talk about the biology of high protein diet, we have to start with what drives us to food. Now, before starting this conversation, I would like to introduce you to a hormone that is responsible for taking you towards food. The initiation of this whole feeding process comes from the signaling activities of a hormone called ghrelin. Now, ghrelin is a hormone that is produced from your stomach and binds in your brain. Now, the particular region of the brain is hypothalamus. When we go into hypothalamus, there will be a bunch of little places where certain homeostatic activities, these specific places are called nuclei. They function together in your brain. And so in the hypothalamus, there's this nuclei called arcuate nucleus. In the arcuate nucleus, there are neurons. Neurons are basically brain cells. And ghrelin specifically binds and stimulates AGRP neurons in the arcuate nucleus of the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is a mid to interior brain region that sits below the thalamus, for anyone who knows neuroanatomy, and it is responsible for homeostatic functions. Whenever your body goes away from its natural state, so when you're in a fasted state, right, your body wants to bring you towards a homeostasis, basically. And in doing so, it will release hormones. One of the hormones that we talked about is ghrelin. So when you are hungry, ghrelin is released from your stomach. It binds in the arcuate nucleus of your hypothalamus, specifically the AGRP neuron. It stimulates those neurons. When your body is away from this homeostasis, it generates these feedback systems that brings you towards this dynamic equilibrium we call homeostasis. Interesting facts about ghrelin in research: when rats are injected ghrelin, they become obese. As we talked about, what does ghrelin do? It promotes feeding behavior. When ghrelin is administered in rats, the rats become obese because ghrelin is responsible for increasing feeding behavior. And so rats eat, and they just become obese. So when ghrelin stimulates the AGRP neurons in the hypothalamus, it is responsible for stimulating a bunch of different signaling pathways. Now, this is how cells communicate. Something is stimulated, and you have this signaling cascade. Signaling cascade is just series of chemical reactions, one step at a time. The end goal of that, in this case, is eating food. One key system that ghrelin will stimulate is our dopaminergic system. It is responsible for anticipation. So when ghrelin stimulates neurons in the brain, it has the ability to stimulate the reward system, and then we physically increase our movement towards food. Now we have talked about the role of ghrelin. This will lead to eating food. So for reference, we'll just compare two diets: high carb diet and high protein diet. The high carb diet, let's just say, will have 10% protein, and the high protein diet will have 30% protein. When you eat both types of meals, you can say, two satiety hormones will be released in your body. Let's just talk about the first one. First one is cholecystokinin, CCK. Cholecystokinin, upon a nutrient load, will be released from your small intestines. And then, after the release, it has the ability to influence the brain, but it also influences its local system, the GI tract. So it will locally impact the activity of the GI tract. One of the key things it does is it inhibits gastric emptying. When it inhibits gastric emptying, the food that you have ingested stays in your stomach longer. You feel much more full. The perception of hunger is reduced and the perception of satiety increases when the food in your stomach stays longer. So I have previously said the high protein diet gives you highest amount of satiety, and this is true. Compared to a high carb diet, the high protein diet will release cholecystokinin in the most effective manner. There is a significant increase in cholecystokinin in the high protein group compared to a high carb group. The food in your stomach stays longer and the perception of satiety increases, so you eat naturally less. There is no mental effort required. There's no mental control. Well, there is some mental control required, but there's the degree to which you allocate mental effort suddenly decreases just because you're trying to eat a diet that is physiologically helpful for your goal of maintaining health, weight loss, building muscle, etc. Taking this idea one step further, that cholecystokinin is effectively released in the high protein diet, it has the ability to be released in the most effective manner when certain cells in the intestines sense aromatic amino acids. Aromatic amino acids look circular in shape, so tryptophan and phenylalanine. So this one study, they basically saw an increase in calcium upon aromatic amino acids compared to non-aromatic amino acids like alanine. And so what I'm trying to get here at is, if you have a high protein diet, a 30% high protein diet will obviously have a large number of amino acids compared to a high carb diet with low number of amino acids. There is a large quantity and variety of amino acids in the high protein group. What that does is it will have aromatic amino acids, and so it will stimulate these intestinal cells, increase calcium. Calcium is a key messenger in your cells. Calcium is very important for sending important signals in your body. And when calcium increases, it has the ability to release cholecystokinin. And so this was a little one step detailed than what we touched on in regards to cholecystokinin being released effectively in the high protein group. And now we'll talk about the second hormone, GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide hormone. GLP-1 is an anti-diabetic hormone. So what that means is, when you eat, you will release GLP, and it will also signal satiety like cholecystokinin. It acts much like cholecystokinin, but it also does other important things that I will explain. Apart from inhibiting gastric emptying, so you have increase of perception of satiety, it inhibits glucagon. Now I'll explain what glucagon does. It also stimulates the release of insulin. So glucagon is a hormone that makes glucose in your body. Now, why does it make sense that GLP-1 inhibits glucagon? It makes sense because when you externally ingest food, there is no need for internally producing glucose. In other words, the glucose requirement is being fulfilled by food. And so when you eat food, GLP-1 inhibits the effects of glucagon. Glucagon maintains blood glucose levels in a fasted state. Now, on the other side of the coin, there is always increase of insulin when there is reduction of glucagon. Increase of insulin makes sense because when you are taking it in food, your blood glucose levels will spike. and you have to release insulin so that you can transfer glucose into your cells. Similarly to cholecystokinin, GLP-1 is effectively released after a diet or after a meal that is high in protein, 30% protein, compared to a high carb meal. One important thing to note is that blood glucose levels are important markers of biological health, metabolic health, and mortality. So when you release GLP-1 in a very significant manner, high significant increase, that's a good thing because it will reduce glucose spikes. What happens in a high protein diet compared to a high carb diet, GLP-1 is released effectively and significantly higher than in the high carb group. Thereby, glucose levels are maintained. There is no high glucose spikes, and that's a sign of a good metabolic health. Lastly, I want to end this video by saying when you have a high protein diet during your weight loss, you preserve lean muscle mass. And that is really important because in my experience, when I started losing weight, I did loads of cardio. I did not focus on my levels of protein. And I'm pretty sure, I feel like I was way weaker than what I was. When you work so hard for your weight loss and you lose strength and you couldn't do things that you were doing when you were larger, it just hurts a little. It's just demotivating. So if I had to do my weight loss again, I would hit more than 100 grams of protein every day, just because you can build muscle and lose weight at the same time if you have a high enough protein intake. High enough protein intake is required to preserve lean muscle mass. I hope this video was really informative. I know it might be some heavy biology, but that's what I am aiming to do right now. Put forth this type of information, and hopefully this came out as a easier biological video. I hope everything made sense in the video. My hopes is to get better at explaining biological mechanisms and general biology and other topics. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in more educational videos.